Hello everyone, and welcome to the 237th episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring Aku from Samurai Jack. Villains, as heinous as they can be, are typically only scions of evil, men, women, and monsters who cause death and destruction for reasons unending. But on occasion, we're treated to characters who aren't just evil, but are evil themselves, the personification of all things wrong in this universe that serve as some of the most diabolical entities ever created. Aku is such a being, a shape-shifting master of darkness whose reign of terror spans millennia and stretches across countless planets throughout the universe. And in this video, we're going to discuss all the terrible things that make this creature one of the most evil ever envisioned. Now without further ado, let's begin. In our world, the notion that there is a universal force of evil is solely the realm of speculation, at least at the time of this video's release, as our only knowledge of what cosmic or divine moral forces may underpin the fabric of reality can only be gleaned from the various religious doctrines of the world or from the musings of our fellow man, both of which, in the absence of any concrete evidence, remain matters of faith. However, anything is possible, but perhaps not knowing is a comfort. Perhaps living in a world where the idea of inherent universal evil being a matter of faith is a blessing, for to live in a world where it's a certainty seems like a curse. In the alternate world of Samurai Jack, there exist gods, magic, and all the various creatures it births, a wondrous world of enchantment and endless possibilities. But with gods, magic, and magical creatures comes evil incarnate, black magic, and the demonic creations that come from them. Aku is that evil incarnate, and it is through his influence that this magical world was poisoned beyond recognition. Long before man walked the earth, the gods Odin, Rama, and Ra battled against a cosmic mass of evil in the form of an inky and shapeless darkness, a darkness that was presumably poised to consume the entire universe with its evil. The three gods managed to nearly destroy this creature, but unbeknownst to them, a fragment of this evil escaped, made its way to Earth, and landed on what would one day be known as Japan, destroying the dinosaurs in the process and setting itself up as a black, poisonous lake amidst a forest of spindly dark trees. For millennia, this evil would lay dormant, consuming all that dared to tread near it. As time passed and human civilization grew, though, this threat became increasingly harder to ignore, and so Jack's father, the Emperor, set out to eliminate it with a magic arrow. Unfortunately, the arrow that was supposed to end this evil instead did something much worse, granted it sapience in the form of Aku, a word which in the Japanese language means evil. That is the origin of the greatest evil the universe has ever known. And as evil given sapience, his character is as diabolical as you might expect. He relishes in carnage, mayhem, oppression, and domination, a being who laughs at the suffering and deaths of others as a hobby, and a dark god whose vanity, megalomania, and desire for total control over the minds and bodies of his subjects is made evident by the omnipresence of his visage across all manner of buildings, signs, screens, and merchandise. He's loud, boisterous, overconfident, arrogant, condescending, merciless, sadistic, and cruel beyond measure, a being whose every movement and word is reflective of the ultimate evil that he embodies. Well, for the most part at least, for Aku is far more human than he may like to admit, with frequent laughs in this series resulting from his slapstick antics or his strangely human behavior, like ordering a pizza and actually paying for his bill, requiring sleep and stretching once he wakes up, or attending therapy sessions with himself in an attempt to relieve his depression. While these additions to Aku's character are clearly meant to be a source of comedic relief in the series, these moments also add a crucial element to his character that sets him apart from other villains of his caliber, a sense of familiarity. Aku, despite being the supreme evil in his universe, is not above acting in ways that beings lesser than him might, something that makes him an ultimate evil that we can actually identify with in many ways, unlike characters like, say, Morgoth or Sauron, who are so far removed from what it means to be mortal that their characters are firmly rooted in the darkest of evils. Aku, on the other hand, often appears to us as a very real, very personal evil that is as intimidating due to his status as a Dark Lord as he is for his capability to appear as a benevolent being who one might mistake for being not quite so evil as he might seem. That being said, no amount of wisecracking or silliness can lessen the fact that he's the master of darkness and source of all evil in this universe that deserves no forgiveness for what he's done to this world. And his existence in this story gives us an answer to a question that I hope we never have to answer in our own world. What would happen to the world? No, the universe, if evil were to reign supreme. Aku, being the manifestation of evil that he is, has his hand in every act of evil one can think of, and the world that he's created reflects that. In Aku's cities, grime, poverty, and crime are the mainstays, where towering dark buildings rooted in piles of garbage choked by poisonous miasma are the norm, and where exploitation and suffering is the currency of the land. There is nowhere to escape to for even a moment where one can pretend that they are ruled over by a dictator of the most heinous caliber, and life in these veritable citadels of evil can be superficially pleasant, but overall, it is a miserable, terrifying, and dreary affair. Outside his cities, entire continents have been reduced to ashes, with barren wastelands and ruined civilizations being more so the norm than any signs of life are. Dotted across the world as well are fixtures like the Dome of Doom, a macabre gladiatorial arena a la Mad Max, where various creatures are forced to fight to the death, and seedy bars filled with scum and villainy seem to be around every corner, with their patrons wandering the roads committing all manner of crimes with abandon in a world where evil is law. Still, the world does hold many different civilizations in this age of darkness, all of which live in constant fear of the tyranny that is already at their doorstep, or that could arrive at any moment. And that fear isn't only felt on Earth, but on every planet where life exists in this universe. For Aku has had his hand in destroying the lives of plenty an interstellar being. And not only that, but he's invited plenty of alien beings to come live on Earth that either have nefarious intent, or who have had their worlds plundered by him, and who are now forced to live on this planet as slaves to his will. But perhaps the worst thing about Aku is his indestructibility. For it's one thing for an evil to reign over the world that has the potential to be overthrown, and another entirely when that evil is incapable of being overthrown by normal means. No amount of firepower, steel, or mortal magic can harm Aku. He bathes in flames just as well as he can devour poisons, and breathes comfortably amongst the foulest of pollutants. His mind is an impenetrable fortress of dark will that, while being susceptible to trickery, cannot be truly harmed in any way. It is only the power of the gods, and the weapon they've given to their chosen champions, that serve as the true cure for the disease that is Aku. And because that's true, from the moment Jack was sent forward in time by his sorcerous powers, thousands upon thousands of years of torment would darken the universe, with not a shred of hope for reprieve to be found. And if we look further at everything we see Aku or his minions doing in this story, we're given a perfectly dismal picture of just how horrifying the world of Aku is. Of all Aku's crimes, one of his worst and most prevalent is his enslavement of countless individuals and species across the universe. Jack's people were enslaved by Aku long before he was sent into the future, toiling in crystal mines in service to their oppressor. The dog people were forced into servitude by Aku when they discovered gems during one of their archaeological digs, becoming slaves in these gem mines whose disobedience or inability to meet quotas resulted in their crucifixion. The Monaquas of the Mosconian galaxy had their world drained and plundered of its riches by Aku, forcing them to seek refuge on Earth under the protection of the being who had destroyed their home. And while they were granted refuge here, they were commanded by Aku to build statues of him once a month to remind all who live who the true master of the Earth is. The Woolies, gentle mammoth-like creatures, were enslaved by the Crycholites, a species who allied themselves to Aku in exchange for the tech they used to subdue these beings and exploit them for their own gain. Monkey Man, the character who teaches Jack to jump good, came from a family of humans who were enslaved by Aku to run his logging machines, forcing the boy to find refuge with a tribe of monkeys away from his family and the suffering they continue to endure in his absence. The thing is, though, the world of Aku is filled with dark technological monstrosities unending. Thousands, if not millions upon millions of robots and androids that are constantly doing Aku's bidding. So there is absolutely no need for any organic creature to suffer enslavement in this universe. But Aku delights in suffering, which means that the unnecessary enslavement of the various peoples under his rule is in fact a necessity, for how would he nourish himself on their tears otherwise? Another thing we see Aku dealing in a few times is holding various peoples hostage in a number of ways in order to potentially draw out Jack and eliminate him. Or he offers them a reprieve from the evil he's inflicted upon them if they assist him in capturing the samurai. But Aku, being a monster who would never dare to offer even rewards he had promised to the people he makes deals with, nearly always pulls the rug out from under these people when he's done with them. Though we never see what may have happened had they succeeded, when Jack was a child and he was being trained by the chief of an African tribe, a rival tribe was offered a great treasure should they capture or eliminate Jack for him. The Triceratops were promised that their land would be returned to the surface if they apprehended Jack, but as soon as he was given over to him, Aku immediately reneged on his promise and attempted to flee with Jack in tow. Exter, the professor Aku commanded to create ultra-robots, was promised that his village would be spared if he aided him, but upon completing his work and unleashing them, Aku still destroyed his village. Aku's trickery has also come in more personal forms at times as well, with his shape-shifting prowess being used a few times to trick Jack into believing he was being aided by or assisting someone in furthering his goal of returning to the past. Like when he tags along with Ikra, a woman Aku disguises himself as that offers to help Jack find a jewel that can turn back time, or when he changes himself into the Swamp Hermit and promises to aid Jack by showing him the whereabouts of the Gems of Cronus. However, on one occasion, we almost get to see Aku confront Jack without the use of trickery, as after tiring of the same old routine with Jack, Aku agrees to fight Jack in a one-on-one duel, but he of course ends up attempting to win through treachery. For when it comes down to it, Aku, like many a villain of his caliber, is a coward who fears death above all else, and so any dirty trick to keep him living is a trick that he's willing to use. What we see Aku dealing in the most, though, is recruiting or creating various minions and organizations to subjugate people or destroy Jack. This series is filled with hordes of evil minions that Aku throws at Jack, from robotic bounty hunters to alien mercenaries to gangsters to demons. Aku enables and facilitates the heinous actions of these individuals on a daily basis to advance his goals, with his more notable minions including Damongo, a demon born from the pit of hate who captures and enslaves great warriors to be used as an endless army of whites, which is an eternal torment forced upon numerous people to expand the power of Aku's armies. The minions of Set, demonic beasts with a fervent bloodlust, who were released by Aku so they might take out Jack, regardless of how much suffering they may have unleashed upon innocents. And the Music Maker Man, who brainwashes the children of Aku with his nefarious beats and turns them into mindless extensions of Aku's will. It should be noted as well that many of the beings in Aku's employ aren't simply in it for the money, but because they actually revere their Dark Lord as a god. The most prevalent example being the women who make up the cult of Aku and the daughters they create for him. Fanatics who would be willing to do anything, including giving up their very lives, to support their dread master. Now in all of these examples, there's one thing that binds them all together, and that's corruption. We've already discussed a bit about how this world has been thoroughly altered and damaged by Aku's corrupting influence. But really, that is his greatest crime, for it's his corruption that serves as the root of all evil, in a world where the root of all evil reigns supreme. As I said a moment ago, you can see this in all the examples I just gave you, but you can also find it in many other areas, like in the ways that Aku has corrupted individuals like the 3 archers guarding the well of King Osric, his imprisonment of the man who would become the lava monster, and Kuni's family, the family who were haunted by a demonic spirit that trapped its victims' souls in a hellish realm of unending terror. And wherever there is a hint of goodness or rebellion in the world, you can be sure Aku will be there to eliminate it, or convince the people who cling to it that his evil is in fact good. But try as he might, Aku was never able to eradicate all things good from this world. And much like in our own world, there were people all across the universe who were waiting for their opportunity to throw off the yoke of Aku, but who had no way of doing so until Jack came and began healing the world in so many ways, and reignited the fires of the people who had suffered under Aku for so long. But in truth, it's not just Jack who defeated Aku, for just as Jack said, evil is unnatural, and in the end, it is always doomed to fail. With every move Aku made, he created enemies all around him, people who accepted that he was their lord out of necessity, not out of want. Yes, there were some who enjoyed the evil their master allowed them to unleash, but there were far more still who only wished to live their lives in peace and harmony, free from oppression. And it was the combined efforts of all the people who Jack had worked to free over the many years it took to finally get back to the past that spelled Aku's end as much as Jack's sword did. That being said, had Aku not been the arrogant master of evil that he was, and chosen to have Ashi deliver the killing blow to Jack, perhaps things may have ended differently for him, though that's highly unlikely. Even in the comics, which aren't considered canon at this point, Aku was still doomed to meet his end, for though it was left open-ended, much the same gathering of heroes occurred there as it did in this story, with an aged Jack finally embodying his role of the king he was foretold to become, leading the charge against Aku with all the forces of goodness in tow. Not even when he stalled for time by shooting a laser through Ashi's time vortex to send them to a timeless realm in the game Samurai Jack Battle Through Time was he able to stop his destruction. For no matter which way you slice it, the timeless lesson that underpins this entire story is a truth that no villain who clings to evil can escape. That no matter how all-consuming evil is, no matter how many lives it destroys and lands it corrupts, it is always doomed to fail in the end. Evil, even evil that is ingrained into the very fabric of the universe, is in opposition to the existence of the universe. Malice that seeks to warp and end all life, so long as there is life left to warp and end, will always be destroyed. For so long as there are people left with the will to live and love, there will always be people ready to fight the injustice that seeks to grind them down into nothing, even if that evil is as great as the likes of Aku. And Aku is as evil as they come, for how can he not be? He is quite literally the manifestation of evil, a shape-shifting master of darkness and the shogun of sorrow, whose cruelty and malice are only limited by the medium we find him in. For if a character like him were found in a more mature setting, there's no doubt that the hell we see him unleashing in this story would have been amplified tenfold, with the sounds of the wind replaced by the wails of his many victims, and the oceans of every world he touched soaked in the blood of the slain. Perhaps, as a sapient being, Aku was capable of doing good, but simply chose not to. A creature who was far more comfortable reveling in the suffering he caused than he was in even thinking about engaging in the smallest acts of kindness. But perhaps he was also incapable of good, bound by his very nature to embody the evil he was born from, and doomed to walk this path of destruction, whether he wanted to or not. No matter what the case may be though, it stands that Aku, demon lord of the entire universe, is a character that will surely stand the test of time as being one of the most evil creatures in all of fiction. An entity that embodies every villainous trait that one can imagine to the utmost degree. A creature who one can find no sympathy or understanding for due to the nature of his person and the gravity of his actions. For to gaze into the flaming visage of Aku and the world he created is to gaze into the darkest pits of evil. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Analyzing Evil, and I hope you've enjoyed. What are your thoughts on Aku? Did I miss anything? Let me know down below and leave a suggestion for a villain you'd like to see featured while you're at it. If you liked this video, hit that thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. A big thank you to all of my subscribers, my patrons, my members, anyone who's decided to honor me with a super thank, and especially Elijah Kai VA, our Dark Lord channel member, and a most vile thank you to those whose names you're seeing on screen now. Join the channel's Discord server and subreddit to interact with myself and the community, and follow me on the social media platforms listed below to keep up with the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.